Hello and welcome to another episode. Today we're going to look at the Nicaraguan Contra War, which took place between 1981 and 1990. The war was fought between the US-backed Contras and the Sandinista government of Nicaragua. The conflict was part of the larger Central American civil wars, which were fought during the Cold War between leftist guerrillas and right-wing dictatorships with support from the United States and the Soviet Union respectively. But that's just a really boring way of putting it, so let me explain. In 1979, a leftist guerrilla group known as the Sandinistas overthrew the longtime dictator of Nicaragua, Anastasio Somoza Debayle. The new Sandinista government was led by Daniel Ortega, who established a socialist state and began implementing sweeping reforms. These included the redistribution of land, nationalization of businesses, and a complete restructuring of the Nicaraguan society. Naturally, this did not go down well with the country's wealthy elite who fled Nicaragua and lobbied the U.S. government to do something about it. President Ronald Reagan was happy to oblige because he had been looking for an opportunity to intervene in Central America. You see, the problem with the Sandinistas was that they were communists. And by 1980, the U.S. was in the midst of a so-called communist scare. This was largely a result of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, which demonstrated the growing threat of Soviet expansionism. As a result, Reagan took a hard line against leftist movements across the globe and supported anti-communist guerrillas wherever he could. And so the U.S. began funding and training a right-wing rebel group known as the Contras, who waged a war against the Sandinista government. The war began in 1981 when Contra soldiers crossed the border from Honduras and launched attacks against villages and military bases inside Nicaragua. At the same time, the U.S. imposed a trade embargo and cut off all foreign aid to the country. This caused severe economic problems for Nicaragua, but the Sandinistas were still able to hold off the Contras due to the latter's lack of military experience and discipline. However, the situation changed in 1983 when the Contras were given new life after the arrival of a man named Pastora. An experienced soldier and former Sandinista guerrilla himself, Pastora had defected to the U.S. side in 1979 after becoming disillusioned with the revolution. Under his leadership, the Contras adopted a scorched earth strategy which involved attacking anything and everything that the Sandinistas represented, such as factories, farms, and even civilian homes. This caused widespread devastation across the country and created a refugee crisis. By 1985, over 100,000 Nicaraguans had fled to neighboring countries such as Costa Rica and Honduras. Despite this, the Sandinistas refused to back down. They were determined to hold on to power and transform Nicaragua into a socialist state. To that end, they reached out to their allies in the region, namely Cuba and the Soviet Union, who began providing them with weapons and ammunition. This turned the war into a proxy conflict between the U.S. and the Soviets, with each side supporting their respective allies. As the war dragged on, the U.S. became increasingly frustrated with the Sandinistas' ability to hold off the Contras. In 1986, President Reagan authorized a covert operation to destabilize the country through acts of sabotage. This included the mining of Nicaragua's harbors, the downing of 2 planes, and the assassination of 4 Sandinista officials. However, these operations were unsuccessful and only served to further isolate the U.S. on the world stage. By 1990, the war was completely stuck. The Contras were unable to make any significant gains against the Sandinistas, while the latter were unable to defeat the former. As a result, peace talks were eventually held in the capital city of Managua, and an agreement was reached to end the conflict. The Contras agreed to lay down their arms, and the Sandinistas agreed to hold free elections. In the end, the war resulted in the deaths of some 50,000 people and the displacement of hundreds of thousands more. It also left Nicaragua in ruins both economically and socially. Nevertheless, the war had broader implications for the region as a whole. It marked the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union and its allies in Central America, and it also demonstrated the limits of U.S. power in the region. So do you think the U.S. was justified in supporting the Contras? Or was it wrong to intervene in Nicaraguan affairs in the first place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.